Hi everyone, welcome to core unit launchpad number 9. Today we're not going to be discussing a whole core unit MIP set, but we're going to be actually speaking with Prose about his candidacy to join Long for Wisdom as a governance facilitator. So yes, as always, if you have any questions or doubts, feel free to interrupt. And Prose, if you want to introduce yourself for those that don't know you.
Yeah, hi, my name's Peyton, go by Prose 11, just about everywhere maker. Yeah, happy to be here today. Did put together a brief little presentation just to keep me on track here. Oh no, the memes got there first, that's okay. Yeah, I put in an application to be an additional governance facilitator for the GovAlpha core unit, and that's what we're here to talk about today. So for those who don't know me, like I said, my name's Peyton. I do have some relevant experience in the governance domain. I figured might be good to tell people about for those who haven't chatted with me too much. Kind of at the top of the list, I suppose, I was chief of staff and a legislative aide out in Colorado, from Colorado's 52nd House District, working in the Capitol there and getting kind of involved in governance. I was a political science major in college, so very interested in the realm of governance. And I do have some managerial experience as well. So I'm used to kind of assigning people tasks, following up, meeting objectives, that sort of thing. All good stuff when it comes to being a facilitator. Maker-wise, you might have seen a few of the MIPs I've written. Got 3 in a row there, 47, 48, and 49. Those are the multi-sig governance MIP. We've got a few core units and I guess an interim multi-sig that are trying to meet those standards and be an officially recognized MakerDAO multi-sig. MIP 48 was the streaming payments from the KEG MIP. So when that gets rolled out, we'll have a way to disperse payments for those who need streaming payments. And MIP 49 was just recently rejected. That was the staking rewards one. So we'll see where the future goes for that one. If you're looking for me on GitHub or Rocket Chat or the Maker forums, I'm Prose 11. So pretty good bet that's me if you're in a Maker area and see that username pop up. I joined the Maker community kind of later on in 2020 in November of last year, and have been drinking from the fire hose and trying to get as involved as possible the entire time. Really found my way to several little echelons of Maker governance there, help out in governance communications in addition to what I do for GovComms, or in addition to what I do for GovAlpha, sorry. Help take notes, snippets for the GNR meetings. A lot of those I help write. So if you got a problem with that, take it up with me, I guess. But in general, like really, I'm a writer by trade. So kind of just hopped in and tried to help writing as much as I could. Yeah, so I guess that's enough background and stuff for me. Go into kind of why I want to be a governance facilitator and what I think I can bring to the table. Governance philosophy, it's all about cones. Nothing else needs to be said. But like in actuality, though, I do think a large part of the job is kind of laying out clear boundaries and expectations for everyone and helping keep those boundaries in check. So what I would really like to kind of follow in a lot of regards to that with Long for Wisdom's footsteps, as I think he's done a really fabulous job in terms of establishing norms and enforcing them on the forums and as a moderator in chat. And that is really my philosophy, is trying to be as transparent as possible about what is acceptable, what expectations are, and holding people to account for that. Definitely recommend you read my facilitator commitment if you haven't. Spent a decent amount of time writing that together, but I also understand no one wants to read essays. So if you haven't read it in full, I forgive you. But the key aspects I wanted to pull out of my commitment to maker governance were these commitments, for lack of a better word, to accessibility, neutrality, and transparency. They were rather intentionally put in that order. If you read the GovAlpha Mandate that got passed and kind of established our core unit, neutrality is probably like the big explicit condition of governance facilitator, as well as like what we would do as a core unit. However, I did throw that second because to me, I really see us as the front lines of maintaining accessibility within the DAO. Kind of a lot of different directions I can go with that, but I guess the simplest is to say like you can't be a decentralized autonomous organization if you don't allow people to join with ease and to participate, no matter where they're from, what their background is, and kind of what their opinions are. Like we need a space that allows those to surface, and for people to be able to participate, it has to be accessible. So that is my like number one as what I'd want to bring as a facilitator, is this commitment to making the spaces as accessible as possible, taking in those notes of who we're able to bring into the community, and like perhaps questioning like, hey, who is being excluded by our setups we currently have. But that obviously doesn't negate the other principles. And neutrality is an important and very big part of the mandate. Also a little bit harder to put your fingers on in terms of like, what does it mean to be neutral as a facilitator? So to me, I really try to express this as a critical component of enabling participation, in that as a facilitator, like if you, and particularly as a governance facilitator, I guess to be specific, if you are not neutral, you really are hindering people's ability to participate, right? Because if you are putting forth certain views that you personally believe in, and therefore as a representative of governance, it very much gives the impression that those views are the way to go, and anyone who doesn't hold those views isn't welcome to participate. So obviously that feeds into the first point of accessibility pretty well. But in general, I see neutrality as kind of being supportive of the governance process of teaching people how they can do things, how they can put forth their ideas, and not taking a stance on those ideas within themselves, other than, this is how you do that. Also, again, with Long, have a lot of good things to look up to and to learn from there in terms of modeling this aspect of neutrality, and particularly with allowing views to be put forth in terms of the governance realm. For instance, that doesn't stop like MIPS relevant to governance from being written. MIP 51 comes to mind. That's up in the cycle right now in terms of rewriting the monthly governance process. It's important that we're still able to weigh in on those without challenging our neutrality. However, that's pretty different from bringing forth other type of proposals. The final part of my commitment, I guess, is transparency. And this is again, relating back to the core concepts of a DAO, that really, if we have the system that anyone can participate in, and that is supposed to be welcoming to scientific debate and different forms of community governance, we really need to be transparent about the discussions that are taking place, and about why things are being done the way they are. Because if people don't know what's behind a decision, you really can't expect them to request improvements to that. You really can't expect them to monitor how that process is going if they really don't know the inputs coming into it. So I leaned on a bit of a cliche, and regretting it perhaps a bit now, but I said sunlight remains the best disinfectant. This idea that any misdoings, anything that needs sorting, is best to get it out in the open, where conversation can take place and things can be improved. Yeah, like I said, I don't want to take up too much time, and I do have my commitment online for people to read and get a little more in depth about maybe some of my perspectives there. But kind of want to open up to questions and comments to people as another part of my mentality going forth. You know, Leslie Knope, a great person to embody. What I hear when I'm being yelled at is people carrying loudly at me. So bring it on if you got it. I shared a link to the presentation in the chat here. It's got links just to the GovAlpha Mandate, Long for Wisdom's Facilitator application, in case you wanted to compare those, and then, of course, mine. But other than that, I'd love to open up the floor.
That's actually a good segue for one of the few questions that I have, Prose, which is you mentioned it, and I think Tim did as well in the forum. Like, you're presenting yourself as an additional facilitator, and as much as I like Long, I think that facilitators should be standing on their own rights without being additional to anyone, right? So that's a little bit my I don't know if to call it feedback, right? But my comment on this.
I don't have that necessarily in front of me, but I guess what I would say about that is our mandate is clear that we would like to have 3 governance facilitators. There's a lot of really good reasons for this, particularly in terms of redundancy, having good across globe coverage, both in terms of time and representation for contributors, and just in general as kind of a backstop and making sure people are empowered to, more people are empowered to do something should they see something wrong when they're the only ones around. So perhaps additional was maybe not the best way to put it, but I think it is important that, like, I don't see myself as you know, trying to be a second Long, as much as really adding my own personality and my own commitment into that mandate that was already been put forward and approved by the community.
Yeah, I got you. I was just trying to give Long the opportunity, if he decides to leave anytime in the future, to have that possibility.
I mean, I'm not planning on going anywhere, so at least not proximately. I kind of don't want to pull a Rich on Peyton, which is that's what Rich did, and was he onboarded me and then promptly disappeared the month afterwards or something, which was fun.
Well, Rich did the same, right?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, that's what I mean. Rich did that, so I don't really want to do that to Peyton or anyone else.
Nice. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, this is Tadeo. This is no point considered a jab at Long, but I'd be interested to know your point of view, Peyton, about anonymity in our community.
Yeah, definitely. That's a very relevant topic. I think for crypto culture, like, as well, right? Like, I think part of the cool things that cryptocurrency in particular enables is this idea to shield identity without losing trust. And I personally see that as something that's important to maintain within the organization. And I think we're used to, like, identity-based trust systems, so it's much easier for us to trust faces, perhaps. But I would challenge that. I think, like, you run into the same things, you know, like, maybe there's more work involved if you want to duck out a community or create a fake identity to try to dupe someone. But fundamentally, it comes down to, like, what you can contribute to an organization and like how you let your actions speak for yourself. And I don't see much of a difference whether you put a face to yourself or not in that regard.
Cool, thanks.
I think, Prose, your proposal is too boring. It's not controversial enough. Like, everyone likes you, and it's almost a formality. Come on, we need tough questions.
I
Frank.
have a quick question. I didn't make it, and I hope my mic is okay because I'm using my headphones. But I didn't make it for the very first part of the call. But I was curious, what like, assuming that you do get voted in as a facilitator, what would be the division of labor or responsibility between yourself and Long for Wisdom at GovAlpha?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question, and probably really wasn't covered much at all in the presentation. I guess I would lean on our mandate in terms of talking about the idea of kind of having autonomy within it, right? Like one of the things we mentioned is equal footing in terms of discussions on budget, in terms of making big decisions within the core unit. But in terms of how it practically is going to lay out, I do think we've got some exploration to do, in that we're growing very quickly, right? Like even just from when I came in November versus where the DAO is at now, it's become much harder to keep track of all things and all projects. So having that level of trust between facilitators is going to be really important in terms of delegating assignments. But in general, I think we'll kind of lean on what we both enjoy doing and are good at, and can make sure that all tasks are covered, generally as redundantly as necessary or as possible, but with the understanding that the division of labor really comes down to taking ownership over particular items and coordinating with what that looks like. We have some practice, obviously, in that now that I've got this application out to the world. We are practicing that within the GovAlpha unit. I can't say it'll always look that way, and maybe Long wants to leave some thoughts in there as well. But in general, I see it as this idea of equal footing, of collaboration and decision making, and of delegation when appropriate.
Yeah, thanks. That was a great answer.
Prose, are there any concrete projects that you would like to focus your energy on the next, let's say, 3 months or 6 months? I don't know, whatever timeline you would like to.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we did put out our latest budget proposal, which does highlight goals for the core units. A lot of those are a bit broader, so they will be kind of a mix of Long and I looking at them. In general, though, I have been pretty much since I came into the DAO, I was asked to look at source cred, and have been participating pretty heavily with that integration and figuring out how to improve it and how to monitor it and all those things. So I definitely see that going forward as something I'll probably keep taking the reins on. And because, yeah, I enjoy it. I find it interesting. I've got good community connections there, and I think I can bring value in that. As it relates to transparency and a couple of my other goals, I also think like I'll be taking on some projects. Got one in the works for kind of showing what we've been up to in GovAlpha with the forum thread. Those would be kind of the two main areas, I guess I could say I look to take ownership of for sure. But there will be some give and take as we go forward.
And Peyton, today I noticed that you have some expertise when it comes to real estate. And I was just wondering if you had some kind of background, or, you just seem to know RWAs pretty well, and wanted to know if you had worked in the space before. But yeah, I'm totally for, having you onboarded. So no criticisms here. Just want to know if you had some kind of background, because it seemed like you pick it up pretty quick, which is cool.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that, Frank. No real estate experience. Most of that comes from just engaging with Seb in the Real World Assets Committee. I attended all their meetings and asked a lot of silly questions, but I'm a pretty quick learner. I do have some like finance experience, I guess, like trading options and investing both in traditional markets and crypto, but not much in terms of real estate or any of that back stuff. But as a poli-sci student and just a general student of life, I'm very into reading and learning as much as I can. And particularly when I find out I'm wrong on something, figuring out why I'm wrong and what information I was neglecting. So I found that really helpful for building that foundation within the Real World Assets Committee.
And yeah, that makes sense. And when it comes to advocacy, I just thought of something like, how's that going to work? Are you going to be advocating like 50% of the things that are the requirements of what's being asked for by the community, and 50% will be long? I mean, how's that going to work? Or maybe you did cover it and I missed it because I joined kind of late.
If you don't mind me making sure I understand the question in terms of like, as in speaking for governance, how that's going to work? Is that the crutch of the question?
Yeah. So being an advocate for governance, raising community governance issues, right, with the community. And so recently we had the, I was for the Marcom's core unit, and paper was against it. Like how's that going to work? Like, how do you guys divide? Maybe somebody did ask you this. I feel like they did, and I was spaced out. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, David did ask a question in terms of division of labor. I think this goes a bit to that, but it is a different subject. So I definitely welcome the question. I don't know if there will be a pure, like, we'll take turns advocating for things. Maybe if you want to chime in, Long, but I don't know. I think we both will have kind of the freedom to speak. We'll be coordinating with each other on important issues. But in general, also, I think like experience is important. Like if you want to imagine like 50-50, sure, in terms of like ability to do things and to give my weight of opinion. But I definitely think Long is seeing a lot more within community governments and has a lot more to draw on with that. So particularly for tough things at the start, I might be deferring to him more. But I suspect I'll be able to handle things just as well. But am mindful. I guess I'm a pretty self-reflective person, so I do try to be very mindful of when my opinion may not be the most important or the most valid in the room.
Oh, and can you kind of give us some color on what the daily activities are of a governance facilitator? I would imagine you already have spent like a bunch of hours per day with Long and the rest of the team. So can you give us a little color, like what's it like? Do you guys have meetings on Mondays? Do you reconvene on a Friday? I mean, how does that all work behind the scenes?
Yeah, so part of the challenge is some things do happen on a recurring basis. Some things are very much ad hoc, right? Like if there's a governance emergency, you can't plan for that to be on a Monday. But we do have a pretty robust system and work in terms of like required weekly governance actions, for instance. Like we meet as a core unit once a week on Tuesdays. Obviously, every week we have polls and executives going online, or on chain, I guess I should be saying. So we do have a pretty robust coordination effort on that in terms of what needs to be done Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Monday for polls as well. Obviously, the GNR call on Thursdays is a pretty key commitment to it. So being present for that and giving a report is a big part of the duties as well. But kind of once all that stuff's taken care of, then you really have to work on the projects we've committed to is in GovAlpha. Lots of stuff on the budget in terms of what we're doing and what we're trying to take into account. That does vary pretty significantly day to day, but the general idea is you're attending meetings, working on these weekly things, and then filling in progress and trying to make things happen for the rest of the projects we're trying to get off the ground.
Oh, and on like Long, you don't take weekends off, because I always see you very active. So Long shows up on Sunday night, North American time. But yeah, man, thanks for for answering all those questions.
I would say I do still tend to take weekends off. I just find the chat very addictive. So you'll sometimes see me there before I go out on a hike or something.
yeah, just to clarify, I do take weekends off. I just on Sunday evening I have to do some stuff for the polls because they go on Monday. So.
Yeah, I know. I was just kidding, man.
Mio has a question in the chat about, I don't know, Mio, if you have access to a microphone. It would nice to have your accent on the record, but otherwise I can read it.
Hi guys. Yeah, okay. So I can let you hear my accent. Yeah, I was just I wanted to ask about this idea basically of scaling the core units with more facilitators, as opposed to, for example, creating a separate core unit, right? So yeah, I wanted to ask more about this because in a sense these are two different type of scaling, and I don't know if one is better than the other, or if you consider this well in some details.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. For me, like I'm very much behind being a part of GovAlpha, and I see the I see the wisdom, I guess, for to lean on the pun there, of having multiple facilitators within that very central governance core unit. That doesn't discount the possibility of there being other ones in the future that maybe take on different parts of governance or attempt to work on parts that maybe we are working on now. But to me, I really do see the value in having multiple facilitators there, spanning time coverage, spanning representation of different parts of the world, and being able to give opinions and reach consensus is another really big part of it that I kind of completely forgot to cover during the presentation, which is this idea of like, you know, if something has to be done with regards to governance, if you're a sole facilitator or if you're in separate siloed core units, it's kind of one or two people's individual opinions that matter. But when you have a group of people who have all been trusted and who have been informed about their goals and public with the community, when you give them the chance to kind of collaborate and say, hey, you know, is this all right? Like what needs to be done here? I think you reach much better decisions than having siloed or independent consensus mechanisms. Sorry, words. And yeah, Long, yeah, I would love for you to hop in there because you phrased it much more eloquently than I.
Yes, so it's kind of what Peyton mentioned at the end there. I think, like in terms of you kind of always want there to be like a kind of clear path forwards with governance in the event there is kind of confusion, right? Like if something becomes unclear, like some outcome it's not right. You really want, like the situation you really want to avoid is having like multiple governance facilitators in different core units saying different things about how there should be progress, right? So having them in the same unit kind of, well, personally, I think helps mitigate like this risk, right? Because not only are they sort of going to be, you would imagine they'd be working closer, or more closely together, given they're managing the same unit. But also kind of critically, they share like a budget, right? And this kind of means that there is a very strict cost to kind of the facilitators disagreeing, like to the point of like, you know, to the point of like cannot sort of reconcile these issues. In that, like if there's a 2 of 2 multisig and the facilitators are like can't agree, then nothing can happen at all, right? So there's kind of like a backstop there in that, like in order for any progress to be made, the facilitators need to agree. And that's kind of not true if you have like separate core units with their own budgets. Like there's essentially there's no kind of like, what's the word? There's no like mechanism to kind of like force the facilitators to work together essentially, which you really kind of want. It's kind of incentive, but it's not. It's more than sort of incentive, right? It's like it's kind of like a backstop, like incentive thing, right? Like in just that, you know, you cannot like you can get to a point where there's just like no way of moving forwards, and because there is that risk, you have to kind of compromise more than you would if you had your, like if each facilitator had their own resources. Now, I think in terms of core units generally, it's kind of a little bit more complicated because, you know, some core units can scale kind of much more in a much more parallel way. Like, you know, you can have like a risk team that works on, you know, one set of things, a risk team that works on another set of things, a risk team that works on a third or fourth set of things, right? And they don't necessarily have to interact or work together for that to be scalable and good. But that's kind of not the same for governance. You kind of really want there to be kind of one, I guess, voice, right, coming from the kind of officials or the governance facilitators. You really don't want there to be a situation where the facilitators are saying different things, at least in my mind.
Yeah, I fully stamp that. Just especially like in terms of like again, back to, I love swimming to this philosophy of a DAO, but the idea that the community is really in charge, and governance helps the community indicate and go forth with their decisions. So if you have different people who are saying different things to the community, it gets very confusing. Like who do you listen to? And by having one group that has to reach consensus, you do kind of solve that problem.
All right. So I feel we're reaching the end of the line of the questions microphone.
I just want to thank Peyton for bringing Leslie Knope into this conversation. Really appreciate that.
It was a solid reference.
Any last takers? All right, so just pros regarding the timelines. When can we expect to see these go into formal submission?
Yeah, it'll go into formal submission at the soonest possible date. So you're looking at, looks like a couple weeks from now, 3 weeks, I guess, would be the end of that.
Mm-hmm.
So shouldn't have to wait too long to get to express your vote.
Good to hear. How can people find you in the forums and chats and whatnot?
Yeah, forums, chats, pretty much anything maker related. I'm Prose 11. Try to be as responsive as possible, and in general spend too much time around here, so shouldn't have trouble reaching me.
All right. So thank you everyone for coming. Thanks Prose for everything, and we're looking forward to seeing this proposal move forward.
Likewise, thanks all for coming, and yeah, please do comment and ask more questions if you got them. Really appreciate being in this position where this makes sense. Like just a very good feeling.
Bye everyone.